Hello everyone, it's day 28 and today I have March 31st newspaper Indian Express opinion page. So this is Sunday's edition. So on Sunday edition there is no editorial and there is no explained page as well. So I have a opinion page and I found two important articles over there. So first is about the 1920, the start of India's election journey. So let us see what this article is going to say, because the election journey that was started in India following the Montagu-Kelsford reforms in 1919. So this article is talking about that Montagu-Kelsford reforms, also known as Government of India Act 1919. So let us see what this article is going to say. So the writer looks at issue through a legislative lens and works as PRS legislative research. So he is Chakshu Roy. So let us see what he has written. So in 1920, the Delhi resident Abdul Majid came to the attention of the British government. He was someone who would ordinarily not be on the administration's radar. His descriptions varied from pretty trader to sweet meat seller, and a confectioner. In November that year, he filed nomination papers to contest an election. Opposing him were a couple of lawyers and a seller. The government dismissed Majid and the bangle seller as ridiculous candidates. Wow. Come election day, Majid trumped his rivals, securing 288 votes. The lawyer who came second got 26 votes. In official records, a British officer described the contest as contrary to expectations, impudent buffoonery carries the day. With this win, Majid joined a select group of Indians elected to the highest lawmaking body in the country. So the 1920 elections were the starting point for direct elections in India. Until then, the colonial policy was to select a few educated Indians for the legislature and use them to understand the needs of the masses. However, it became difficult to ignore public sentiment on more Indian representations in legislatures. Our colonial administrators responded in 1909 by increasing Indian members through limited elections. A controversial measure was a separate electorate for the Muslims. So it was in 1909, which is known as I think which reforms I don't remember it clearly. I think Morley-Minto reform in 1909. So the report on Indian Constitution reforms 1918, popularly called Montagu-Kelsford reforms, highlighted the shortcomings of the 1909 election process. The report noted at present, the at present electorates of general character hardly exist. Almost all are designed to represent special classes or interest and consist of very few persons. Those which represents Mohammedans were intended to be fairly inclusive, but even those are limited to a few hundred electors. The Montagu-Chelmsford reforms recommended setting up a national legislature with two houses. One of the houses in this law-making body would have members directly elected by the people. The report also suggested setting up legislatures at the state level with elected members. The British Parliament accepted these recommendations and passed the Government of India Act 1919. One second, let us reread this. The Montagu Chelmsford reformed recommended setting up a national legislature with two houses. Okay, fine. One of the houses is in this law-making body would have members directly elected by people. The report also suggested setting up legislature at the state level with elected members. Okay, so the British Parliament accepted these recommendations and passed the Government of India Act 1919. Until then, there was no need for a full-scale electoral law. However, with these recommendations coming into effect, lawmakers had to be elected by the people. The government needed an electoral framework to hold the first large scale election in our country. The 1919 law and the rules made under it provided the nuts and bolts of the election process. Together, Together they specified the qualifications for voting and contesting elections and the mechanism for preparing the electoral roll. Eligible voters and candidates has had to be British subjects. The age for voting was 21. For contesting elections, it was 25. Okay, so for voting age it was 21 and contesting election it was 25. So right now for age for contesting election of Lok Sabha and state legislative assemblies is also 25, but the voting age has been reduced by I think 58. I don't remember, but it was around 1988 somewhere. Um, that amendment which lowers the age from 21 to 18. By the way, the for the third tier government, that is panchayat and that municipality, The minimum age for contesting election is still 21. So women could neither vote nor contest elections unless the legislature in the state removed the sex disqualification, which they did. The law, which also provided for different constituencies such as Mohammedan and non-Mohammedan, rural and urban for both Sikh, European landholders, and chambers of commerce. Voters and candidates also had to meet domicile, income, and property holding criteria to provide to participate in the elections. The bewildering array of qualifications for election participation meant that the administrative workload was reduced and resulted in a minimal franchise size. For example, in the election for the National Legislative Assembly, the Majid contested from the Delhi constituency. They were a total of 3,300 voters. After the Montagu-Chelmsford reforms became operational, the British government scheduled the first direct election towards the end of 1920. In August that year, Mahatma Gandhi launched the non-cooperation movement. A part of that movement was to not participate in the election process. So, prospective candidates were discouraged from contesting. In some cases, individuals whose success at the ballot had the potential to ridicule the reform process and embarrass the British government were also put up. In Lahore, the election process turned violent. The government office reported, "It seems to me that these incidents are the direct results of violent speeches made by the advocates of non cooperation during the last month or two. Owing to the series of speeches, the British government of India is now hated by the ordinary citizens of Lahore. The gift of responsible government which is being made to India is now uh, despised." The 1919 law and the elections a year later led to more Indians in the legislature, but the right to vote was the domain of very few Indians. However, there were leanings that independent India's parliament would build over. For example, the colonial government in 1920 passed a law criminalizing threats, bribery, and inducement during an election. It penalized these corrupt practices with both jail time and a fine. So they were added to be Indian penal. They were added to the Indian Penal Code and continue to be part of it. Since independence, our parliament has worked towards strengthening legal provisions to keep election free and fair. However, the most significant step has been ensuring that everyone over 18 is enrolled to vote. Now, roughly a billion Indians will be on the electoral rolls in the upcoming general elections. Edwin Montagu, the catalyst for the 1920 elections, noted, "The honest education of the electorate is a matter of primary importance. May one who takes an takes may one who takes an anxious interest in India's future echo the appeal that there should be no appeal to racial or religious prejudices and express the hope that in the turmoil of an election the great charm of the Indian courtesy may not disappear. His words are as important today as they were 100 years ago." So this was about the election process that started in India. Another important article that I found over the page Economy, in which our finance minister Nirmala Sitharaman had said that GDP growth in financial year 24 seen at 8% or more on average. So let us see what this article is about to say. So finance minister Nirmala Sitharaman Saturday said the country's domestic product GDP will likely to grow at an average of 8% or above in the financial year 2023-24. This is higher than the recent data from the National Statistical Office, which showed that the economy is expected to grow at 7.6% in financial year 24. She also said that a third term for the government will see major reforms at the third level of the federal structure, Panchayati Raj and urban bodies, to encourage businessmen to make investments. When businesses have to start or investments have to come, they have to be grounded somewhere, at villages or periphery of a city. In those places, if elected bodies are not open, transparent, aware, or ready to be welcoming, everything we do will be on paper and not on the ground, Sitaraman said. This is a very right statement that she has said. Speaking at an event organized by the Mint newspapers, Sitaraman said, "The country has seen macroeconomic stability with the first three quarters of the current fiscal having registered GDP growth of above 8%. The economy expanded by 8.2% in quarter 1, 8.1% in quarter 2, and 8.4% in quarter 3. Hopefully, the fourth quarter which ends tomorrow, March 31, will also have it growth in the range of 8% or above 8%, resulting in 2023-24 having an average GDP growth of 8% or over 8% is what my expectations is," she said. We can't grow at 8% without consumption happening, she said, referring to comments made by the experts on tepid consumption conditions. Sitaraman said inflation management is far better now as compared to the years before 2014 when it was in double digits. So we are playing in tandem with the RBI in making sure inflation is well within the tolerance band. Food inflation particularly is being contained. Seasonal shortages in food do spike up inflation, but that is also under control because there is a group of ministers who are looking at it, she said. In February, the CPI or retail inflation stayed flat at 5.09% against 5.1% in January. The finance minister said the banking sector's health has improved with banks now providing rich dividends to the government. Banks non-performing assets levels are coming down and they will come down in the next few months, she said. A recent report by the Care Ratings has projected gross NPAs of banks to be at 2.5 to 2.7% in financial year 24 and improve to 2.1 to 2.4% by the end of the financial year 25. Sitharaman said public sector banks are now being nudged to be a lot more professional in handling their affairs. These lenders are able to raise money for development activities and are no longer looking at the government to infuse capital every year, she said. Sitaraman also said that the tax notices are being sent by the Income Tax Department under the Central Board of Direct Taxes because of the approaching time bearing deadline for assessment years on March 31. Cases are not being opened beyond 6 years unless the amount involved in substantial or some search or some seizure somewhere has given reason to think that this particular account has to be opened, she said. Many notices which are being sent now are because they have to start honoring that 6 year time limitation and the last assessment year which comes into the 6 year limitation beyond which they can't open up. This 31st March is when the time bar is imposed on the tax authorities themselves, meaning they can't open it up on 1st April, she said. So that was about the financial year growth rate. So there is no other one is about the artificial intelligence chips and tools to China. So let us see what this short little article is to say. The Biden administration on Friday revised rules aimed at making it harder for China to assess US artificial intelligence chips and chip making tools, part of an effort to hobble Beijing's chip making industry over national security concerns. The rules released in October seek to halt shipments to China of more advanced AI chips designed by Nvidia and others as Washington cracks down on Beijing over concerns its advancing tech sector could help boost China's military. The new rules, which run 166 pages, go into effect on Thursday. They clarify, for example, that restrictions on chip shipments to China also apply to laptops containing those chips. The Commerce Department has said it plans to continue updating its restriction on technology shipments to China as it seeks to bolster and fine tune the measures. So this was all about today's newspaper. So this was Sunday's edition. So there was not that much important articles, but there were a few articles that I have read is important for examination point of view. Otherwise, there are many articles which are not that much important for examination point of view, but they are read by some people. But we'll again meet on Monday with a few important articles over editorial and the explained page. So till then,